Hello, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. Direct response copywriting is such an important part of driving growth, but an art that not nearly enough people study today. But it's so important to understand how to get people on the hook, if you will, and then sustain that attention with the right kind of copy. I've written a lot of copy in my life and have such respect for some of the folks that really work at their craft, like today's guest who I've known of for years, as well as listened to his own podcast on the subject. Kevin Rogers is the founder of Copy Chief, a professional freelance direct response copywriter, the best-selling author of The 60-Second Sales Hook, a speaker, and a former stand-up comedian. And on this episode, we'll discuss copywriting, what direct response really is, grabbing and keeping people's attention with the best copy, how struggle works in copy, where you can get a free copy of his book, Geronimo and Other Chiefs, comedy clubs, Dangerfield, Chappelle, Carlin, Carson, Letterman, Pryor, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a Copy Chief with a Chief Shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. All right, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. I know that you tell your story all the time, but please share your comedy to marketing story and really your career to date.
Yeah, man. So it's a pretty wild ride. Did stand-up comedy starting at the age of 18.
Yeah.
Sort of on a dare, I was the funny kid among my friends, and I really loved the craft.
Yeah.
I was really critical of myself, even when I was doing I was like almost like a comedy jukebox with my friends. That it was around the time in the late 80s when all the specials were coming out. It was the first time we'd seen Jerry Seinfeld or Sam Kinison and all these great comics, and so we would watch them over and over and over, and I could really do their acts. I would learn the timing and the vocal inflections, and so it was really fun to go to parties and do these bits for people. But then I thought, okay, well, what if I actually tried to write my own stuff? Can I actually be funny? And did it, and it went well, and spent the next 10 years of my life in comedy, touring. I was on the road by the time I was 20, touring all over the country, and having a blast, man. And this is back before GPS, Kenneth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I look back now and I go, how did I not miss a gig? That's a miracle, right? I used to time out my trips. I had like a matchbook cover, ripped to the exact legend of 100 miles or something, and I would just flip it over the route, and I go, oh, that's about 4 hours. I'm good. I'll get there.
Oh, no.
So did that for years, and
well, you remember the old Rodney Dangerfield specials that he used to
Yeah,
profile all the comedians? That was the stuff I would watch over and over and over.
Yeah, that's what we were watching. Exactly, man. And they were the best. It was, again, Seinfeld,
Ray Romano.
Ray Romano,
Oh,
Robert Nelson, remember? All those great comics, man, who became legends. And they were all breaking out right then. It was their big shot. And man, so that was a blast. But then I don't know, man. I
You like
something in me. Exactly. I didn't have a lot of wisdom in my 20s, but something told me if I hit 30 and things weren't clicking, I was going to have to do something different.
Yeah.
Because the truth was, man, there were a lot of guys, and I say guys because it was primarily guys and some women too. Some really funny women, but I was working with a lot of comics who were already in their late 40s when I met, and they were burned out, and they were bitter, and they were really, really great club acts. But you could just tell they're probably not going to get that big break, I could see the odds in front of me, and I didn't want to become that. I just did not want to become an old, bitter road dog. And so, when things weren't clicking, I knew one thing, Kenneth, for sure, and that's that I had met the woman that I was going to love the most in my life and should marry if I could. And she also professed to have the same feelings for me, but we could never be in the same place because I was traveling and she was living her life. And I woke up one day and said, man, the only thing I know for sure is that I'm supposed to be with Michelle. And if I don't try to make that work, I'm really going to be lost. And so made that work. We got married. In Chicago, we moved back to Florida, started a family. And by some weird, strange miracle, I ended up working for an old comedy friend who was running a marketing company. It was through that company I got introduced to direct response and to copywriting. And when I then discovered John Carlton and Gary Halbert, that was it for me, man. I said, this is it. This is like a second thing in my life that I feel qualified, uniquely qualified to do. And this one looks like you can actually control your fate a little bit. So I was really excited.
Yeah, well, it's nice to have a job because I've done it as well before, not for a decade. I quickly found out that I needed to do something better and actually get paid. But, you know,
Yeah.
I've always appreciated the craft, and I can't even tell you how many times I worked on a Dangerfield impression and tried to recite his jokes and just understanding the delivery. It was just brilliant.
Right.
It was more than just what the jokes he would tell. It was the
yeah.
delivery that Carson had, that Letterman had, that
Yeah.
all the
Carlin.
greats. I mean, oh my God, George Carlin. I mean, if anybody.
Yeah.
But
Did you ever hear? There's a great series called I think it's called Comedians on Comedy or something like that. And it's there. So this guy went around doing these interviews. One's with Carlin, one's with Johnny Carson. And man, you look for them. I want to say like laugh.com or somebody has them. They are gold, man. And the one with Carlin, he goes into detail about every vocal inflection, every word choice he made, right? None of that is accidental, It's so calculated. But of course, the great performers, they get on stage and it just feels super in the moment and spontaneous. And that's the magic.
well, this is probably not the best analogy, but I think copywriting to me, as important as it is, I know it's important, but it's sadly kind of a forgotten art. It's kind of the Rodney Dangerfield, if you will, of marketing. It's just it doesn't get enough respect. But how do you see the industry today for copywriting and for copywriters, especially the freelancers? Because you're one of the guys that knows all the guys that have been doing this for years. But there's been a big change and pivot, especially with all the automation that's happened over the last few years and how that comes up. How do you sort of look at the industry for yourself, the people you consult that you see are doing this, and where they're running up against it?
To be honest, man, I think there's never been a better time to be a copywriter.
Yeah.
What's changed is that you have so many different paths today than you used to. Direct response is such a it's such a broader term than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe people don't think of it that way as much. They think of direct response as infomercial type offers and very aggressive campaigns. But if you think about it, direct response just means any ad that is meant to get an immediate reaction of some kind. And man, when we look at the traffic platforms we have now and how dynamic the communication is with video, with audio, animation, there's so many interesting and evolving ways to get across your message and communicate with your audience. And email alone, man, is still so powerful. And I think you incorrectly used. We just came out of Black Friday as we're recording this a few weeks ago, and it's the greatest indication of how wrong people use email. How many emails, Kenneth, did you get?
Oh my God!
From companies you had no idea you were subscribed to.
No, I posted something on Twitter.
Did or sold?
Cyber Monday seemed to not be a Monday. It seemed to be a legitimate excuse for a lot of brands to spam the ever-living shit out of me for an entire week.
Yeah, right. And so that's direct response done wrong to me. Direct response done right is that you create a value exchange and you then have a dialogue with the people who need your help the most, and they are very happy
to
have your attention and to tell you everything you need to know to understand how to help them better and create products that they'll gladly buy because they know they're made for them and inspired by them. And that's the way I run my business in direct response. And that's always been the thing that's attracted me about direct response, not the data. And look, I know it's a data driven industry, and the big publishers live and die every day by their spreadsheets, and it's very competitive and cutthroat. But the truth is, man, we're seeing a big evolution in how that stuff's going to play out. You frankly cannot keep that up anymore and get the kind of numbers you used to get. Facebook's not going to have it. Platforms going forward are they're going to start from scratch modeling what Facebook has learned about what gets them in trouble, right? Or,
Yeah.
gets them a seat in front of the Senate.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody really wants, unless you're Mr. Rogers or something. But
well, I'll tell you another one. Google's algorithm. I get unnerved a little bit when people talk about how Google wants to write the copy now and automate it, and they want to take whatever you give them as a basis, and they want their machine to tweak that on their own. That may drive a call or a click through or a lead, but that also may just be written copy that doesn't help them solve the problem. It maybe spurs some other intent that they have to reach the brand. Maybe it's to cancel service or anything else. That copy there's not enough smartness, if you will. Is an idiot just made up that word, but there's not enough smartness to it today that proves where that click through or phone call translated into a lead or a sale, as opposed to just a click through or a call to customer service or something else. And that we're not there yet, but that's where I think the art is really getting lost in lack of appreciation.
Yeah, I would agree with that, kind of to an extent, though. I will say this, man. Look, we can't fight the beast, and we can't fight evolution. And believe me, I get disgruntled by these ideas of, copy producing robots. I think there's two camps of this that I've seen. One is, I forget who recently launched it, but they're obviously, maybe it's IBM. They're developing true AI that can write and test copy hooks.
Yeah.
Way faster than humans ever could. And there is a value in that. When you're just straight up testing and you just want to see what order of words is resonating more with people so that you can optimize an ad campaign, fine. However, like you said, man, the human element cannot be replaced. Like genuine, great storytelling. Look, sales has always been and always will be a transfer of enthusiasm from one person to another.
Sure.
And computers do not understand enthusiasm. They can fake the language and things like that, but just like another human, with faking enthusiasm, you see through it, you can feel it, you can sense it, and genuine enthusiasm can be felt and sensed. And I think humans, at least for the foreseeable future, will keep responding more to actual human, genuine enthusiasm than something manufactured.
Yeah, and I'm a massive proponent of leveraging data to move that forward with machine learning. I just don't think we're at the point where it's become something that everybody Googles and thinks, the robots are taking over tomorrow. We've still got a ways to go, but
yeah. We're not in danger yet.
No, I mean, Skynet's a few years away at least, but outside of, I don't know, probably surgeons and astronauts, I don't know that I have a greater respect for a profession as far as how difficult it is. And you hear somebody like Howie Mandel talk about this all the time when people come on AGT about how hard it is to do stand-up comedy. I'm curious, where are the parallels that you've seen over your career with comedy and comic writing in particular, as opposed to copywriting?
Yeah. It's a really good question. The parallels between stand-up and copywriting are mainly, I think, developing an instinct for how to win and keep attention. Yeah. I think that's the strongest parallel, because if just like if you were a door-to-door salesperson and know when the door is about to be shut in your face and what to say to not get that door to close. Uh, a comic. Look, the thing about stand-up, I've been coaching some local stand-ups just for fun,
Yeah.
and some young stand-ups. And the thing I keep telling them is, the good and bad news, man, is the only way to develop a joke is on a stage in front of a live audience.
Absolutely.
Right? Anything else you can practice. I've been learning to sing very poorly and very slowly, but really enjoying the process. But I can practice singing all day long, right? In my car, in the shower. You can't practice. I can practice my jokes, but it's only to a point.
Yeah, dad jokes with your kids in the car only go so far.
Right. And so it's a slow process. So anybody who's done stand-up and invested the time to develop an instinct for how quickly you need to get to the point is a huge asset for copywriting. When I watch stand up now, that I've been in copywriting so long, I see so many parallels in the structures.
Yeah.
I did a whole training after I got back into stand up called How to Be You But Funny, and it was all about how these parallels in how the structures can lend to each other. And so that's actually a podcast if anybody wants to look that up. How to Be You But Funny, it's called. And it's cool. Things like one I love is a punch counter punch.
Yeah.
Where you meet the audience in a common belief. You meet them where you know that they probably stand now on that belief, right? And then you establish yourself as an authority on the topic, and then you propose to them that maybe there's another way to see this, or maybe there's another reality going, behind this. And if you think about that, that's how so many great jokes work, and that's how just about every great sales letter works. It's like, we all know this, we all believe this, we have evidence that this is true, but what if? What if there was recently a secret meeting of people who actually make the decisions, and here's some evidence around that? And, it's a great story. It's you're taking them on a ride, and you're taking off their objections and helping them reform their thoughts around an idea as they take this journey with you. And it's very similar in joke telling, storytelling, movie making, and copywriting.
So how do you look at the channels now, especially, you started out when it wasn't just digital, but when you look at all the channels with social and search and email, what are some of the tips and tricks that you see? I say more tips and tricks, more the fundamentals really that work across all the channels, or is there anything you see in your copywriting experience that really stands out that's better to do on one channel versus another, and so on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's another formula I love. I wrote a little book called The 60-Second Sales Hook. Thanks, man. Yeah, and it's the simplest formula in the world, and it's just held up, man. It's been 5+ years now, and I still see it all the time in major marketing campaigns, in TV commercials, and it's identity, struggle, discovery, result. It's just a very shrunken hero's journey, and it probably works better in video than anywhere else, because it's a powerful way, again, with diminishing attention spans, to tell your whole story in as little as 20 to 30 seconds, and making a connection with people, who are your best prospects, which means you have to decidedly not try to be for everybody, right? As you know, Shark, man, targeting, hyper-targeting, niching down is the best way to make your direct
100%
response campaign effective. And so, storytelling is a staple, a fundamental that'll never change. Persuasion. Well, I'll tell you what's emerging in a more important way than ever before is entertainment. personality marketing.
Yeah,
Again, I
agreed.
think it needs to be genuine. You can manufacture it a little bit, but you can really sniff out the difference. If you read, my favorite email copywriter is Laura Belgray. I don't know if you know about her,
Yeah,
but she's incredible. Like
she's
her
been on your
emails
show.
many times.
Yeah.
I've put her on my stage at Copy Chief Live 2 years in a row. She's just incredible. Is such a talent, and makes it look effortless. But it can be learned and taught, but it has to be genuine. I see a lot of people trying to write like Laura, and you can just it's a little off, it's a little forced, but it's okay, man. It's like anything. It's like me doing Seinfeld's act in party kitchens and
Yeah.
screaming like Sam Kinison like a nut until I figured out my voice in comedy. So it's an okay place to start, but it can't be manufactured, it can't be fake. So giving yourself permission to use your personality, to take a few chances and be entertaining, and do something a little different, and still keep the fundamentals of direct response and what we know converts, then that's the key.
So something that I run into, and I have run into several times in my career, and it's when you come up as a copywriter with copy, and then everybody today, whether it's your internal teams or external teams, lovingly has an opinion, good, bad, or ugly. They love to
Yeah.
tell you they think this copy will work better versus because they used it several years ago, or it performs, or
Hmm.
something else. So that you get a lot of people who go with gut reaction. You
Mm.
get an agency who may not have a clue, but they have a big footprint as an agency that somebody's worked with. What are the kind of things that you run into that have been pitfalls and struggles as a copywriter trying to really get the message out that you believe know will work for one of the brands you're working with? Is it writer's block? Is it the boss telling you something different? Is it an agency that doesn't know, driving you crazy? I mean, what are the kind of things you've run into?
Mm. Yeah, I think all those things
Well,
different
that's so
at different
because I'd love
times
to
for
go over
sure.
tips and tricks and hacks, but a lot of times it's that interoffice politics BS that really causes copy failure.
Yeah, man, I tell you, that's why it's a lonely game.
Yeah.
And I talk to people like Paris Lampropoulos and David Deutsch, and I'm fortunate to be close with John Carlton and all
Hmm.
these people, and it's the same for all of them, man. Yes, you've been doing it longer, and yes, maybe you know a lot about what doesn't work, so your instincts are sharper. But we're all guessing, man, and that's why we have to test. And the truth is, you can never test enough to know that you found the perfect message or the perfect campaign.
Agreed.
We are playing a game of good as it can be. We don't want to settle for good as not good enough, but good as we know we can make it. Because what if a whole nother concept altogether? Like, how many big ideas can you test on a campaign,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's why the publishers, they have their dream would be have 50 copywriters trying to beat every control they
Exactly.
have out there. But there's only so much bandwidth to test everything, and you can't just puke out an idea a day at something. It's got to be developed, and some copies got to be written to support it, and these things take weeks and months.
Well, it could be as
So
good as it could be at that moment because you've got factors like other noise, seasonality, and I think good
right,
copywriters know how to take all that into account, and
that's right.
a lot of the other external parties don't.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that is why a lot of the major publishers won't work with, they can't work with
Exactly.
freelance copywriters, because they need that team in house, so they're all having the same
Yeah.
communication, and they're living the same zeitgeist
Yeah.
in
God
the
forbid
market.
anybody think independently anymore, but
Well, I get what they mean about, again, man, like it takes so long just to make sure that a writer is hip to the current trend
agreed.
in something like finance, that if they're not sitting in the same room at least 3 days out of the week, it's hard to nurture that.
I'll add a link to the show notes with the book because it's a very simple read as well, and
Yeah.
you've knocked it out really quickly. It's got some great examples, but I encourage anybody to read it. And I know that's changed your career a lot, but you talk about it as well about struggle, and I'd love to know how how important that is. How do you demonstrate that in your copy? I guess unpack what you mean by that and how brands especially should go about
Hmm.
dealing with and translating struggle to
Yeah.
someone to get them to click.
Yeah, great question. And I tell you what, it's interesting that the corporations are slowly figuring
Yeah,
out how to do this. I used to say, and it's still true to a large degree, as independent business owners, we have a major advantage over our giant competitors,
absolutely.
that we get to be fast to market and we get to be transparent, right? We get to talk about our struggles because struggle is the number one way to bond with your market, your prospects. If you're willing to share a time when things weren't going well and show all the scars of what got you
Mm-hmm.
to where you are now, that's a sure way to build trust and a legit way to build trust. And corporations, even if they want to adopt such an audacious concept as showing
Right.
a weakness, even in the past, there'll be so many meetings and they have to go through legal.
Yeah,
You know,
legal.
it would
Exactly.
it would it's hard to move a giant beast like that.
At most, they would legal would allow you to use the word empathy in your copy if you're a big corporation. That's their way of humanizing
Yeah,
the brand today.
yeah. Yeah, we have a problem right here where you seem to be relating to the
Yeah,
market. That's
exactly.
But who's done it recently though, man? That's impressing me is Domino's Pizza. Have you seen their ads?
Yeah.
I mean, where the message is, look, we take this personally, and when we fail and you get a bad pizza or it's cold or it's wrong or it's damaged, we want to fix it. And so we've instituted this new. I think that's awesome. That hey, we know it, man. Like our thing was 30 minutes or less, and we used to hit every pothole, and you'd get like an upside down pizza and it would be
Exactly.
inedible. And where our vow is that that's not us anymore, and to the point where we're admitting it, we're sort of making light of it, and we're now making that our new guarantee that if your pizza sucks in any way, we're going to replace it as soon as possible. And I love that, man. I think it's bold. And I would have loved to have been in the meetings where somebody proposed that, and the
No
consternation
kidding.
it must have caused
Yeah,
before it got
actually
green.
admitting that we might have messed up. So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
Papa John should be watching those ads.
Oh, right. Well, see, now that's a
That's
good
the
example. 'Cause,
opposite.
well, what did they do instead? They hired Shaq,
Yeah.
who, God bless him, you can pay him to say anything.
Yeah.
I mean, what
Guy's
commercial
worth
hasn't
hundreds of
Shaq
millions
been?
of dollars, and he's going to make me
Right.
believe he's ordering Papa John's.
And so now he's acting like I'm the new face of Papa John's.
Yeah.
Because we know you think they're racist, but they couldn't be racist if they love Shaq, right? I was like, come on, man. It's so transparent.
It is.
And it's insulting is what it is.
Well, one of the things I love that you also talk about is having a conversation with an imaginary prospect. I know so many people, so many marketers fail at trying to pretend they are the consumer themselves. But I'd love just if you will, sort of unpack what you mean by that about having a conversation with an imaginary prospect.
Yeah. Well, it's the idea that you could empathize well enough with your prospect to have a back and forth with them,
Yeah.
right? And so I did this once when I was a little bit stuck on some copy, and I thought, okay, all of my benefits should be objections turned into a benefit, right?
Right.
And so I'm just gonna improv me sitting at my laptop a conversation between the most cynical prospect I can imagine and my expert, right? And so I would have the expert say something like, I'm really excited to tell you about my new workout system. It's a way you can lose weight and pack on muscle even if you've never had success doing that before. And then I would write, next character, sure, oh yeah, this again, I've heard this a million times, let me guess, it's this. Actually, no, I get that you've heard that a million times, but it is not that at all. It's actually quite different than that. And I'm with you that does not work. And I would just have this conversation, like literally type it out. And it's, first of all, it's kind of fun
Yeah.
because you can be as spicy with the language and everything
Right.
going back and forth. You're building characters. It's kind of fiction, but it's based in reality. And you realize when you sort of like take the gloves off and write something like that, you're getting to a much more interesting and real place with the copy than if you try to make it formal and correct. And so that's what I mean by having a conversation with an invisible prospect. That prospect should not want to be your friend, just like in real life. They don't want to see your ad. They don't want to stop. What can you say to them to not only get past their cynicism, but to make them sort of force them to pay attention because what you're saying to them, it sounds so different and counterintuitive.
Yeah, and I would encourage anybody to write themselves a Post-it note before as proof that they got this advice from Kevin and Shark, so that somebody in their cubicle doesn't go, God, why is little Johnny and Susie talking to themselves out loud? And they end up in a straitjacket with HR
Yeah.
standing there. But one of the things you talk about as well often, and I love this because I'm so focused today on helping customers solve problems instead of brands just spewing brand babble all the time, especially in their copy. But when does education, sales copy work where you're helping educate the person with that copy versus when does just pure sales copy work?
Yeah, that's another really good question. I don't know. I think let me try to just answer direct.
Yeah.
I think education is underused and very necessary. If you listen to someone like Dean Jackson, he will say it's always education. And I don't know if you know Dean.
I know who he
Or
is. Absolutely.
heard him say this, but he'll pay $8,000 to run a one-page ad in Success Magazine, and his criteria is that it's going to be the most useful thing in the entire magazine. Not just the best ad, or he wants it to be more useful and interesting than any other piece of content in the entire magazine, and that's why he will give away his entire thing in that
Right.
article. There's no need to go get the book or sign up to a list or do anything, but people do it more because they can't believe his generosity. It's like, this guy just transformed how I thought about something. This is the most educational, useful thing, and so again, it's counterintuitive. But there are times when it's just time, as Carlton would say, just sell the damn thing.
Exactly.
Right? And you don't need, just get to the point. And so, just to keep on the Dean Jackson example for a minute, he does these small mastermind groups, 8 or 10 of them a year. And his whole sales process for that, because he does so much educating and gives so much value throughout the rest of the year, is, hey, I'm doing this thing. Are you interested? And you write back, yes. And he goes, awesome, cool. Here are the details. And he's just selling you the damn thing and telling you, here's what it is. If it's for you, click the button, pay, and they'll see you there. If not, awesome, maybe next time, right? And so that's the most sort of black and white example I can come up with off the cuff. But I don't know that there's a time. I guess,
There's a
if
fine
it's a widget,
line.
yeah, like in e-commerce, a lot of times it's just think about Amazon.
Right.
Look, they're very wise about how they structure it. It's like, just sell me the damn thing. Give me the details I need to know, okay,
Great
that's
point.
the widget I'm looking for. If I need specs, it's a little further down. I got to look a little harder, but it's there if I need it. And then, of course, there's tons of reviews if I need to really. But for a box of protein bars,
Exactly.
I know the brand.
Right.
I just, yep, there it is, and I'm purchasing it, and get me out of here as quick as I can, right? So it's an interesting question, but look, in direct response, if you're using personality, if you're building a brand, certainly if you're building the brand of you, I'd say you cannot overeducate. You cannot give enough away to create that kind of that value exchange.
Agreed. But so many people today that are buying protein bars at Amazon, they're looking for gluten-free, sustainably made, non-GMO, everything else. And it just becomes, there's just such a fine line when people think they're being sold and when they're not. And
Yeah.
If it skews wrong, it's always apparent. But to your point, you can never give too much education away. So how you've talked about this before, but how can someone take great sales copy to write better content and vice versa? That's always something I look at as well, and I don't think people really play the two together nearly enough to help one help the other.
Yeah. Yeah. If we just think about, advertorials, right?
Yeah.
I think you need to first be a good content writer, and then learn to understand sales. Rachel Mazza's probably the best advertorial educator I know of, and she did a training for us in Copy Chief, and that was my epiphany. It was like, oh man, this is such a perfect first thing to try to master as a new copywriter,
Mm-hmm.
because it takes forever to master long form.
Right.
And so I think if we think about marketing that way, like, it's a really good article about a topic I'm interested in. Again, going back to that punch counter punch, it took a common way I think about it and helped shift it for me. So now I feel more inspired, more educated. I always say, Kenneth, will your copy make the dinner table, right? Are you sharing something interesting enough that your reader is going to feel smarter than they were before, and it's interesting enough for them to get, when everybody sits down at dinner and goes, you're just chit-chatting, you go, I learned something interesting today.
Yeah.
And why do we share that? Because we want to sound smart, right? So if you're educating and inspiring your reader enough to have them share what they learned from you, then that's a really good sign that you're going to have a buyer soon.
Well, and so much of the sales copy, I don't think enough people really understand it's sort of a continuation, or it should be a continuation of the story. And it's not two independent pieces that need to live completely separate apart. And I think that's where some people get kind of mixed up with it as well.
Yeah.
One of the things I love that you talk about a lot, and this is something I've been preaching for years, partly because I always sort of believed in the power of three, and the other part because I have ADD. It's the importance of bullets. I'm not you ask me to write a 3,000 word blog, and it's going to just drive me to tears. But if I can just overuse bullets to break it up as much as I can to make you a 2-page document, then I'm okay with that. But talk about the importance of bullets and what you've seen over your career with that, how to utilize it in copy.
Yeah, bullets. I love bullets, man, because they're so useful in so many ways. And writing good bullets is, man, it is a true weapon in sales, because you have curiosity, you have intrigue, you have style, and you can really pack a punch into a single line or two of copy with a well-written bullet. Another way I've used bullets that I think is underappreciated is the idea of what I call bulleting, bullet checking the copy. And what I mean by that is when you have long form copy, I believe that every 3 to 4 max paragraphs of copy, you should be able to pull a bullet out of.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're reading long form copy and you sort of develop an instinct like, oh, what's the bullet I would pull out of that paragraph? Sometimes there's 2 or 3, you know?
And it's a great way to reinforce that paragraph.
Yeah, right. And if you can go for, and unless you're really taking your time to build up a story, if you can go more than 4 paragraphs without any bullet in there, I think you need to see if that copy's earning its place or not.
Exactly. Well, this is kind of a 2-parter question, but I think part of the initial question started with thinking how someone could get better. Where do you sort of point people other than signing up to follow you on Copy Chief, but to get better at copywriting? But with so much, I've heard Rand Fishkin talk about this a lot this year. He talks so much about how non-click search is evolving, and how we're seeing a lot of people go do research, and they're not clicking on, the 3 ads they see on Google or wherever it is. But, what do you think marketers need to do today, copywriters need to do with stepping up their copy because we know that a lot of the ways, not only just the algorithms are changing with the search engines, whether it's Amazon, Google, Facebook, or whatever, but also just that the copy keeps up with that change. I mean, what kind of advice do you take with your own career to sort of keep stepping it up to another level?
Yeah, it's a good question. I want to say that it is, again, man, just like really respecting attention.
Yeah.
And saying, how quickly am I getting to the point? And this is the battle we all face every day, especially with short copy, with ads, and the Twitterverse that we're all trying to communicate within now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the other thing is, not using old methods.
Yes.
Of really aggressive, hypey,
Yep.
bombastic claims, things like that. That again, it sounds old-fashioned even to say that, but I see it every day, still. And here's maybe the gauge I would use. Could this be insulting?
Yeah.
Let's assume what did Ogilvy say, right? The customer's not an idiot. It's your wife. It's someone you respect. What if? So maybe that's part of the thing too. Is like, don't think of this as, can you get one over? Is there a trick that will win attention or get the sale? But what would you say to somebody you really respect if you were literally taking an elevator ride with them and knew you had something really important to share, and use that as a criteria, and sort of lead with integrity in all your messaging? I think you'll get the attention of the right people. And look, you're playing a long game. I think the other thing is, the reason people, aren't clicking on those ads is because we're all just evolving into these new platforms, right? And what we're looking for is the real thing. To scroll down past the ads and try to get to a legit source. And so if people are, if the general public is getting more educated and intelligent about how to choose a good source, then you need to show them that you're a good source, not only with the value of your content, but in other ways too. Make sure it's easy for them to find out, who are you? What are your credentials? How long have you been in business? Don't hide things. Don't slip things past people. Like we said before, say all that needs to be said, just in the right order. Don't put it in the way of people getting the message, but make it easily found for the people who know to look for it.
Kevin, you're in the Tampa, Florida area, an area I love. Went to school in Bradenton for a while. Got to do a dive not that long ago off Clearwater. But as someone who lives in Florida, I have to ask this question, especially to somebody in Florida who's been on a shark's perspective. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Oh, man. Well, that's a good question. I can't pretend to be that educated about sharks. But I don't know, man. I probably, what's a friendly shark?
A nurse shark.
I'm not going to say great whites. Yeah, I respect great whites, right? But they, I like the ones who bite people and then go, "Oh, my bad," and then they spit you out before they take your limb off.
Yeah,
that kind of shark.
A nurse shark from Couples Retreat. When
you answered from. Now I know the answer to that question.
When he freaks out and he's got, thinks he's about to die, and then he brushes off the blood and it's all gone. So it's a catfish. So that's a big catfish. Well, Kevin, it's a special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions you're going to be asked today?
I'm ready.
All right. Making the same amount of money and skipping, the cigarette smoke and the whiskey filled or watered down whiskey drinks. Copywriting or stand-up comedy?
I'm going to say copywriting.
Why so?
Because the culture is so much more interesting.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see somebody in an agency try to write copy, though, and have, people heckle them while they're writing the copy. That would make a really great video for Copy Chief. So number 2, Richard Pryor or Dave Chappelle? We're going old school versus new school.
I'm gonna have to go Chappelle because of the volume of work.
Yeah.
Um, I think Pryor had a different career path where in had
More of a
once
volume of alcohol problem with him.
well, yeah, he had some. They both have had their
Yeah, they
challenges
have had both had
and
demons.
overcome them. But I think prior towards the end, he was just taking the movie roles and and deserved every dime. And if he cashed in, good for him. Chappelle continues to push the boundaries of what we understand as stand-up comedy,
Agreed.
and I really admire that. I think if you look at his volume of work, especially since his comeback, it's not a lot of people are on his level.
I could not agree more. So here's a famous chief question since you run Copy Chief, and this will make very little sense in comparison. But Patrick Mahomes, quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, or Apache legend Geronimo?
As
A question you
in
will.
what scenario?
It's a Chiefs question that makes
Oh,
absolutely no sense.
okay.
Oh, I could only when I was writing this down, I thought, my God, this won't make sense except maybe to a comedian.
Oh, that's great. I love it. I'm gonna go Geronimo because they're both, I think, display skill beyond the norm. But Geronimo, man, had to lead people to imminent death
Yeah,
sometimes.
and he had less interceptions. So, all right, number.
Wasn't a
I
doctor on
knew
the
that would
sideline
make.
waiting to
I knew
look
that
him
that
over.
question would make zero sense. I could not have asked that to anybody else. Um, just happen to have Copy Chief. So number 4, another comedian question, as somebody that respects the craft. David Letterman or Jay Leno?
Oh, it's easy. Letterman. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm a
thank you.
Letterman guy to the bone. Like
Yeah,
no
I
two
probably
about
wouldn't have aired this episode if you'd said the second one,
it.
but he's
Yeah.
yeah, so didn't treat him right. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread.
Oh, cornbread. Yeah.
Good man.
It's delicious, and every time I have cornbread, I go, "Why has it been so long since I had cornbread?"
Oh, interesting. Well, Kevin, where can people find out more about you? I'm going to post a copy of it with a link to the book on the show notes. But where can they follow your thoughts on copywriting, listen to the podcast, and more?
Yeah, it's copychief.com. I'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast because I think that's the best way to keep up with them. And you mentioned they can get the 60-second sales hook book there for free at copychief.com. I think they can find just about everything they need from me there. And I'd love to look. The emails we send out don't include a lot of pitching. I don't promote other people's stuff.
Yeah.
Try to give a lot of value the way I've been talking about. So if you want to give me a shot, I'd love to earn and keep your attention on the email list.
Kevin, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been an honor. Thanks for being on A Shark's Perspective.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Great interview, and hope to see you out there, Kenneth.
So there was my conversation with Kevin Rogers, the founder of Copy Chief, a professional freelance direct response copywriter, the best-selling author of the 60-second sales hook, a speaker, and a former stand-up comedian. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, direct response is often thought of by many marketers as dirty words, too pushy, too aggressive, and that's not true, but it definitely has been practiced that way by plenty of bad actors. I love when Kevin reminded us that, and I quote, direct response just means any ad that's meant to get an immediate reaction of some kind. So when it's been done wrong, it's been done horribly wrong. And as he went on to say, direct response done right is that you create a value exchange and you then have a dialogue with the people who need your help the most. Such a great point, written by someone who really studies this. Copywriting is such a craft, and I consider it somewhat of a lost art form. So much attention is being put now on automation of written copy as well by IBM and Google and others. As Kevin and I both agree, it is the future, but we're not at the point of AI where AI will create enthusiasm, empathy, understand what drives a good lead versus just more traffic and more clicks. We're just not there yet, at least not yet. Second, I really have enjoyed over the years how he talks about the value of struggle and how we can write it into copy. His formula includes identity, struggle, discovery, and result. He referred to it as somewhat of a shrunken hero's journey. Leveraging struggle and vulnerability is an amazing way to be authentic and help people bond with you. And if you're a small business or entrepreneur or someone competing against the industry, these large companies, you have such an advantage here in building trust more quickly. How many times have you seen a big brand admit weakness and failure, especially when it's written in some BSPR language? I'm even struggling with the right words to describe it, but you get my point. Just try it when trying out his great idea of also talking to imaginary customers. Like an actor, do a deep dive on character and see what resonates well with you. Struggle will enable trust and build up that character a lot, I'm betting. Third, I'm such a fan of using bullets. I've used them for years a lot with copywriting. You can use them for style, breaking up thoughts. I like to use them as reminders of what previous paragraphs described, as in you write a few paragraphs on, say, 3 subjects, and then you say 3 bullet points to summarize, remind, redefine, reinforce each point, as well as continue the narrative into the next group of subjects. So give it a try. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Just remember that a priest, a rabbi, and a pirate walked into a bar and they all said, join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.